Hello everybody and welcome back to another round of Modern Melee here in the booth with Ginkgo and Marco.
Hello everyone!
This matchup is brought to you by Esper Reanimator and Rakdos Anvil respectively from their sides. This is an interesting one.
Esper Reanimator is... I play a lot of Hammer and I love Hammer, but Esper Reanimator is my pet deck. I really like this deck. I don't have the greatest opinion about its strength, but I love the deck.
Ooh, I do think that it can be made to fit any occasion, and I do think that it is a valid deck to take on any tournament. On the other hand, Rakdos Anvil, a new kid on the block, it is a lot of Rakdos cards, a lot of artifacts, a lot of sacrificey things with artifacts.
The deck can win out of nowhere. Basically.
Exactly, it's 10 damage from nowhere between the Anvil itself and several other sacrifice outlets. It has the potential to just burn out the opponent. Round 1, game 1, starting with a fetch land from the Rakdos player, just playing a tapped shock land and passing, maybe.
We don't know. I actually don't know what to expect from this deck. I'm aware of it. I've seen the list. I've seen some games, but I never understand the deck. I never understood the deck fully, so I can be like, so I think this play is great.
I mean, Ragavan turn 1 is always great.
True. True.
And from the other side, just Hello Fountain tap and pass. But, connecting with Ragavan is always a good thing, exiling opponent's cards. But in this deck, especially, treasure matters more than the 2 damage or the card.
True.
Not to say that they are bad, but this is an interesting thing. Grief from the Ragavan. Now we know that the Rakdos player has black cards in hands, and Ragavan says you may cast the card, and evoking is an alternative casting cost.
It is.
So I do think if this is they trying to figure out if the Anvil player can cast the card with evoking the card.
I guess not. I guess the decision is to just leave it in exile.
I don't think. I do think somebody stepped in and trying to explain. Maybe they have called a judge. Yeah, there is the grief being returned. I do think it is possible. I do think
it is a good question. I'm not sure myself. You know more than me about it. So.
I do think it is possible, but please do tell us in comments below if we messed this up, because we will see now what the Rakdos player will do. First of all, mana being tapped. Now, there is an interesting play as well. There is the Ravenous Squirrel, which grows when something is sacrificed. And if this is Disciple of the Vault times 2. There is still a treasure in play.
Disciple of the Vault is a card that does what exactly?
Disciple of the Vault, for those of you who do not know, is a card. It's a 1/1 for 1 black that says whenever an artifact goes to your graveyard, which treasures also do, the opponent takes 1 damage. And here we actually see the Ravenous Squirrel, which I do think that this could have been done in a more optimal way by sacrificing the treasure after the Ravenous Squirrel was on the battlefield, because it's a hybrid Golgari cost to cast the spell, so either a black or green, and the player had black mana available, but this is just to show if they value the size of the creature, so the Ravenous Squirrel, more than the actual 2 damage from the Disciple. And we actually see now a card being exiled for the grief and pitch cast from Ragavan as an alternative casting cost.
It also now, instead of being in exile, goes to Esper player graveyard. So maybe he can opt to, as we can see, persist.
Reanimate the card, yes,
Yes.
exactly. But one thing to note, this is a spell that the Rakdos player controls, and when it gets sacrificed, the Ravenous Scroll should have had 1+1/+1 counter on itself. We will see if the trigger, if they miss the trigger or just are opting to delay the trigger while the other trigger from the grief is being handled.
Yeah, a lot of triggers.
Yeah, this deck is extremely, as we can see, yeah, this is the exact pose of somebody who needs to think very long and hard about their decisions, opting to take Ephemerate from the hand containing all the possible pieces for reanimation, but I do not think I saw lands.
I think.
Oh yeah, there is a Marsh Flats. Yes, Marsh Flats, another grief, and persist, and what is the called? What is the
Unmarked
grave, not unhallowed grave, unmarked grave, and unmarked grave being cast, and
of course, Archon to the graveyard.
Yes.
I mean, Ephemerate is a decent choice because Solitude can kill 3 creatures with Ephemerate. Grief
true.
can discard. I mean, I guess Grief is not strong now that the opponent has 1 or maybe 2 cards in hand.
Yes, and we do see that they remember to put a +1/+1 counter on the Reverend Scroll. Good for them. But this is all for the Esper Reanimator's player's turn. Some debate is still going on about either this turn or the last turn. Another fetch line being possibly played, yes, from the Rakdos Anvil player. And deep in the tank, sacking the fetch land, probably getting another counter if I'm not mistaken, trying to get a red source and a green source. One green source in these decks, this is a Rakdos deck, but one green source in the deck to trigger the Ravenous Squirrel, which also has an activated ability saying pay a green and a black and one other, sacrifice a creature or an artifact to gain 1 life and draw a card. Mode that isn't usually used because you have a lot of other sacrifice fodder and sacrifice possibilities in the deck. 3 mana 1 is not worth of getting there, but is also something that can happen. And a big swing coming in for 6, I believe, and maybe even 7. I do think that Ravenous Scroll has 2 counters on it, and another treasure being made.
The last card in the opponent's hand is Sword of the Meek, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
And I think it's not looking good with Archon coming on the board next turn.
Yeah, I do believe they should have just cast the Sword of the Meek, equipped it to one of their creatures, and just swung for 1 more damage. It doesn't matter from the perspective of an Archon coming in, but the life total is still fairly high for the Esper Reanimator player.
Kahira
to the hand. Kahira?
Or what's the... It's not Kahira, is it?
Giganta.
Giganta, yeah. It's not Lurus. No Lurus companion.
Archon getting on the battlefield, drawing cards, gaining 3 life, opponents losing cards, losing 3 life, sacrificing a creature, doing your laundry, everything else this card does. I mean, for such a high amount of mana, it is definitely...
It should. For 2 mana, it should do all that.
Yeah, exactly, for 2 mana. It does get a -1/-1 counter.
Oh, right.
It's this card is crazy good, and they do opt to discard the Sword of the Meek, leaving Giganta in their hand. sacrificing
I assume Ragavan.
Ragavan, it is not going through. Definitely
No,
not going through.
it's not.
Yeah, and here we see a little bit of frustration, a little bit of how do you call this when the opponent has perfects and you are struggling with your deck? This is a feeling that I'm very fond of on my part.
I don't know, sadness, depression, perhaps.
I wouldn't say. But the good thing is that Ragavan gets sacrificed and the Revenue Scroll gets another counter.
Yeah.
Hooray!
Yeah.
With 4 mana, that is not enough to cast the Giganta, and this is a cat in their hand. This is also one of the quote-unquote combo pieces that they play, the cat oven combo.
So it's important to note that the Rakdos Anvil player is desperately lacking. Or does he have... I don't know how Squirrel works. Is Squirrel a sec outlet?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, all
it's
right.
3 mana sec outlet. But yeah, they can sacrifice their treasure and tap 2 lands to sacrifice the cat, to drain and gain a little bit, also draw a card, but this Archon is not sitting still. It is attacking.
Yeah,
Getting
exactly.
3 life, getting the opponents down for 5 plus 3 drain, getting a card out of their hand, which will be Giganta as we know, and getting the Esper Reanimator, another card in their hand. Giganta getting binned, and we will see now what... Yeah, and the cat, not in the oven, but in the maws of the Archon getting just chumped. And the life totals just getting reversed here, 14-7 now in the favor of the Esper Reanimator player.
Yeah.
Can we say what
we
time
are
it is?
in garbage time, definitely. Anvil player doesn't have any graveyard recursion to work with to pay off this squirrel and that cat in the graveyard. So I think that this one big dragon will just finish this game.
Another cat, another life, gain and drain, and the Sword of the Meek getting attached to a 1/1 creature. We usually see this being played with something like Topter Foundry, because you sacrifice the Sword of the Meek to make a Topter, which brings back the Sword of the Meek, which you can sacrifice to make a Topter. Basically, for how many mana you have, you can make that many Topters and end up with a Sword of the Meek attached to the last one of them.
And of course, if you have Urza High Artificer in the play, you can have an infinite combo.
Excuse you, Urza Lord
High
Artificer.
Sorry. I do apologize.
Yeah, but this one is done, and it is frightening to see how much work one, I wouldn't say little creature, but one creature can do in the form of Archon of Cruelty.
Yeah, one creature that can be played turn 3 easily.
Yeah. Doesn't matter that it gets a -1/-1 counter. The most important thing is it is not legendary and it can be persistent back for 2 mana.
So it's a beautiful deck, definitely. But I think that today we have much stronger versions of Reanimator decks. I think Esper has some issues, and I really love this deck. But I think that I've seen the Mardu Reanimator list that I really like, for instance.
Interesting.
And it's much more robust. This list can sometimes lack firepower. Of course, when you have turn 3 Archon of Cruelty on the board, you are very happy, but it doesn't happen every game.
But also, on the other hand, we cannot neglect the Rakdos player. I do think this was a little bit of variance that they had with not hitting their engine pieces, getting stuck a little bit.
True.
Having actually a discard spell in the form of Grief exiled with the monkey, but still lacking the firepower to close out the game against Archon of Cruelty.
Very true.
So a little bit of luck on the Esper side, a little bit of misfortune on the Rakdos side. I wouldn't just discard this deck from this particular game because, as we said, this deck has some mean firepower, especially when paired with the Revenue Scroll or with Disciple of the Vault or with the Anvil itself or with the Cat Oven combo. It can just drain the opponent without even needing combat damage.
I think actually that the Rakdos player only lacked Oven to win this game.
Yeah, probably.
In spite of Archon being on the board.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah.
Also, this deck packs a punch in direct burn. Shrapnel Blast is a 2-mana spell that can deal 5 damage to any target, including the player's face, for a low price of sacrificing an artifact, which this deck is chock full of. It gets a little bit shut down by Graveyard Hate, it gets a little bit shut down by Artifact Hate, but not as much. It has plans for both of those two things. One of the plans is Revenue Scroll getting huge, the other one is just beat down with monkeys and other things. And if everything else fails, you just go into combat.
You just whack them in the face.
Yeah.
with angry squirrels.
Angry squirrels, as Richard Garfield intended. This time, literally.
Okay, so we see game 2, but we see some mulligan action here.
Yeah, Giganta was not in the reveal zone. This is why I prefer to have a different colored sleeve for a companion. If I play one Ripplerus, we will not miss you. Shut up, we'll not.
No, we won't. I agree with that sentiment. The Nightmare Cat is asleep forever, I hope. That being said, I play some tokens with different sleeves, and it didn't save me from shuffling them in my deck.
I mean, that's fine. You will always have something like this. Thankfully, with tokens, you can just say, oh, this is a token, I should have drawn another card. This shouldn't be in the deck, and this cannot be a card from your sideboard because it's a token. So no harm, no foul. But with cards like Giganta companions or other sideboard cards, they actually can be sided in your deck.
True.
And this is not a penalty or anything else. You can over sideboard and have 61 cards in your deck. So if a Giganta would have been in your deck, game 2, that's your fault. Technically.
Fault. Yeah.
And we also see turn 1 monkey from the Rakdos player again, which is probably one of the stronger starts this deck can have.
Yeah, we'll see what Reanimator player has in stock. If he has pitched Grief with Ephemerate, I think that's also a very powerful start. I think that's one of the best starts this deck can have.
Grief Ephemerate or Solitude Ephemerate, both great things because the Rakdos Anvil needs a critical mass of pieces, not in the late game, but in the early game. It needs a little bit of everything, a little bit of lands, a little bit of artifacts, a little bit of creatures, and it needs a synergy to play together. We see the monkey just exiling another land. This is probably the third land that it has exiled this match, making a treasure token, and a little bit of frustration from the Rakdos players' side. Mulliganing a little bit, I do think there is Experimental Synthesizer in their hand, which is a new card, but there is first of all, the Revenue Scroll. But Experimental Synthesizer is an interesting artifact that lets you play the top card of your library until the end of turn, and you can. It is the same thing if you sacrifice the artifact as well, regardless of how you sacrifice the artifact. And we see pitched Solitude exiling something, maybe ephemerating it, exiling another thing. Yeah, so exiling the monkey, gaining 2 life, doesn't matter. Probably ephemerating,
Ephemerate.
exiling the other thing. The ephemerate will come back, decimate the board. This is like
Complete.
75 for 1. More or less, because not only because this actually is a 2 for 3 if you count the ephemerate and the pitched card, but it is also the thing that, first of all, the Rakdos Anvil player needs a critical mass of stuff, and second of all, they mulligan down to 6.
Yeah, so this is very devastating.
The only saving grace is the Solitude cannot attack this turn because it was ephemerated.
Okay, that's Grief pitched Archon, and if I'm not mistaken, there is another Ephemerate in hand.
That's just, yeah. This is a cat, this is the experimental synthesizer. There is nothing to play against anymore. The board is clear, the hand is clear. This lonely Solitude can end the game, and this has been a clinic from the Esper Reanimator. I am really sorry for the Rakdos player. This is some variance happening here, but I do think
God hands.
Maybe God hands, maybe the construction of the deck just lined up perfectly against this deck, but also a little bit of unluck on the Rakdos player's side. Now, we didn't say this yet, but if you like this content, please do like, share, subscribe, hit the bell icon if you like our content. It helps us immensely.
And hey, you can also comment.
Yes, as well, please do comment if you think that we have made a mistake by allowing the Rakdos player to play the Grief from exile by pitching the black card. Thank you all for watching. This is all for this game and match, and we'll talk to you soon. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.